Hello, and welcome to the Gluten-Free Italian. Now, today we are actually going to be cooking a southern dish. But before we get started, Alexa, please turn off the music. I love doing that. So before we get started, I want to let you all know, yes, we are making a southern dish because here in the South, it is very cold for our liking anyway. Woke up this morning to 32 degrees, just a little chilly for us. And so we're gonna go ahead and make chicken and dumplings. Even though this is the gluten-free Italian, we pretty much do everything gluten-free, so whatever it is. That in mind, what we did last night was go ahead and I cooked my chicken in the crock pot overnight so that the chicken would be nice and tender. And then I went ahead, let it cool down, and then separated the chicken off of the bone, put it into my pot, and added celery and onions and all of those things. So set a little bit aside. So we're gonna go ahead and go through the process we would otherwise go through. And when we make our dumplings today, we are doing them gluten-free. Yes, you can make delicious gluten-free dumplings and they will taste just as good as the ones that have our traditional gluten-full flour in them. With that in mind, all you're gonna need for a full batch is one whole chicken. You go ahead and you cook the chicken in advance. You can even buy a roaster chicken if you're trying to, hurry the process. You can buy a roaster chicken from Publix, Walmart, wherever, and go ahead and use that. I do that a lot of times when I'm making my chicken pot pie too, because I love the flavor that's infused into the chicken. It's cutting off some time for me when I'm preparing it for my family, and you're good to go. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by cutting up an onion, a carrot. And the carrot, I'm only doing one because what I did was I set some chicken aside and we're going to put a little bit of chicken broth in it. And then we're gonna just go through the process that we would otherwise be going through if we were making a full batch. I have a batch already made, of course, as usual, right? So we can go ahead and once we have our dumplings made, just drop them in and then manja, it's time to eat. So I hope everybody's having a great weekend. I think that everyone's having some crazy weather. Don't you? I mean, my goodness, there's nor'easters up in the north. There are, just all kinds of crazy weather going on all over the United States. So this is a great time to be making something that's cozy and delicious and is just gonna warm you inside and out. And this is always one of my favorite meals growing up because even though I'm Italian, we did grow up in the South and it's just been a really great go-to. My mom used to make this growing up and I loved it. So I have a friend joining me actually, but she's off camera because she doesn't want to come on camera. But I'm gonna make her taste some when we're done. So I chop my carrots a little large, right? Because I like to know that, they're in there. And my son, who is vegetarian adverse, let's put it that way. He doesn't like vegetables. He likes corn. He likes potatoes. And we can sometimes sneak some onions into him. But other than that, he's not real big on vegetables. So I figure I'll cut him big. And if he really doesn't want to taste them, he could just pick them out himself. But this is dinner. We're not making any special dinner for him. Nothing changes. This is our family meal. And he's got to eat the same thing that we're all eating. Right, Tish?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So put that here. So here we have about 1/3 cup of carrots. Now, if you're making a full batch, what you would probably have is 1.5 cups of sliced carrots. So I used 2 carrots sliced for the full batch. Go ahead and we put that in our chicken, and then we're going to add broth at the end of this. We're gonna go ahead and cut some onion, and if we're cutting onion, then you're also going to be using about 1/2 cup to a cup. Did we say about 1/2 cup, or was it more of a cup of onion? So closer to 3/4 to a cup of chopped onion, depending on how much onion you actually even like in your chicken soup. Because really what you're doing is you're making chicken soup, and then you're adding, you are actually adding the dumplings to the chicken soup. chicken soup is so versatile. We could just do so much with it. So let's go ahead and put those in here. And there we've got a little less than 1/3 of a cup. But again, we're shortening the recipe. So a full recipe, you're going to be using 1 cup to, or 3/4 to 1 full cup of diced onion. And that's plenty. That gives you plenty of flavor. If you want more, go for it. Just add more. And then I always like to add a little bit of celery to my chicken stock. So we're going to chop up about, if we're doing a full batch, we would chop up about 1/2 cup of celery. Finely chopped. Because I'm going to get some vegetables in my son one way or another. That's for sure. Okay, so we've got that in there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of salt. So if you're doing a full batch, you're actually going to add 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. I always cook with kosher salt, almost always cook with kosher salt. I really like the flavor of it. So if you're doing a full batch, you would actually add 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. We've got that in there, and now we're going to go ahead and add our chicken broth. Now, you want more chicken broth? I'm actually going to go ahead and add a little more chicken broth to the one that I already have cooking, and the reason being is when we start adding those dumplings, the dumplings are really going to take up all of that chicken broth, and you're going to have a really nice, smooth, creamy chicken soup with dumplings. Okay, so we've got everything added in. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the stove. And what you want to do is you're going to simmer that. You're going to simmer it for an hour or 2. Remember, your chicken is already cooked. It's already done. So unless you have decided that you're going to be using chicken breast, or you've already deboned your chicken and you want to cook it in the pan and then add the stock, then it would be longer. I cooked mine overnight, so it was all ready to go. And it is so tender. It just falls off the bone that way. So with that in mind, now the big part. The big part is putting our dumplings together. So we're going to take our bowl and we're going to start adding our gluten-free flour. Now, I like to have more of a base of tapioca flour. And the reason I like the tapioca flour is because it has a closer consistency to our regular flour that we're used to using. And so you're going to get, it's going to stay together better. Go ahead and put this in here. And this is measuring out at 1/2 cup. So we're going to need to add more because I want to add a full cup of tapioca flour. Put that in there. And we're going to blend a few different flours like I normally do. But tapioca is always my primary flour. And the reason being is I'll show you in just a minute the rice flour and how the rice flour, the texture of the rice flour. Okay, so now we have another 1/2 cup. So 1 full cup of tapioca flour. Very important. You want to make sure that you use a very fine flour. Hey, Jenny, that you use a very fine flour as your base. I'm going to show you in a second the rice flour so you can see the difference in texture between the 2 flours. Let's put this here. Okay, this isn't quite 1/2 cup, but this has this grainy texture to it. You can feel it when you pick it up in your hands, very grainy texture. So rice flour is great. It will expand a little bit, but the problem is it doesn't hold together. And so that's why I never use rice flour as my base if I'm baking something or I need the whatever I'm making to stick together. You know, when I made the gnocchi a few months ago, my base flour was, again, the tapioca flour with some rice flour in it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add this rice flour. And we're only adding 1/3 of a cup of rice flour to this. Okay. Then what I have is some quinoa flour. We're going to go ahead and add the quinoa flour, and I want to go over this with you really quick too. So quinoa flour has a slightly grainy texture, but not nearly the grainy feel that the rice flour has. So we go ahead and we add that in as well. And then what I'm going to do, just be on the safe side, I'm going to add 1/3 cup more. So I have 2 full cups of flour in my mixture of tapioca flour. Now, you could use other flours. It really is up to you. But this is what I found works for me when I am making anything that I need a base of a strong dough that's going to hold together. The next thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar because I just want to give it a little sweetness. Not a whole lot, but a little sweetness. So we've got 2 cups overall of flour and now 1 tablespoon of sugar because we got to make it a little sweet. After that, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Add that and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, I think. And of course, I do not have my glasses on. 1/2 teaspoon. All right, so 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to mix this up. And then after I mix this up, I'm not actually even using the blender, the mixer blender. So I'm mixing that all together. And I also want to add a little bit of salt as well. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt to this. Sorry, a teaspoon of salt, not a 1/2 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of salt. And very important in the ingredients is going to be some shortening because I'm going to be adding shortening to this as well. Hey, Riley. Okay. Get my shortening out. And I'm going to go ahead and add 1 egg. And we're going to start by adding 1 egg. Don't need a lot, but 1 egg. And then I'm going to mix this in there. Get that started. And now we're going to go ahead and start by adding our Crisco. Now you're not going to melt the Crisco. We're going to add the Crisco as it is. So got 1 pat, 2 pats of Crisco. I'm going to add this in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of milk. And I'm going to add a little bit of milk. Now, of course, you know, if you are also intolerant when it comes to milk, you can always add a different, you can use oat milk, you can use almond milk, whatever is going to work for you. But you want to go ahead and add the Crisco first because you're cutting the Crisco into the dough. And if you don't, that would be kind of hard to cut it into it after you've already added the liquid, the milk, whatever liquid of choice. Don't you think, Tish? That would be really tough. We may add, I think I'm gonna add one more pat of Crisco. So 1/2 stick of your Crisco or shortening of choice. I'm not using oil. I don't want to use oil because I'm trying to make a dough that is going to have some consistency to it. So when I add it to my chicken stock, it's not going to fall apart in it. Nothing worse than all your dumplings falling apart. Just like, what's the point? Okay, let me go ahead and get some milk. And we're going to start by adding 1/3 cup of milk. And see where we are on this. Now, you could use your blender if you wanted to, your mixer. That's up to you. I just don't feel the need for it right now. And then the last thing that we're going to do, once we get all of this together, is we are going to go ahead and add some shredded cheese to it. Ah! Yes, that's my twist. We're going to add some shredded cheese so that we have a little more of a kick. Do you have to? No, of course not. You do not have to do that. the most time consuming part of this, is getting it just right. Don't you think that's always been like just getting it together and making sure that it's adhering together, and you know, you don't want to add too much liquid to it, because if you do, then you've got to add more flour and yada yada. It just kind of doesn't work well, right? My friend's being so quiet over
I am being quiet. But it looks wonderful.
from what you can see of it. Hopefully you all can see it. All right. I've got Instagram going and Facebook going and okay. So now it's time for me to use my hands. Do we need to lower that? Okay, so now I have to start using my hands. I have no choice, because now I've got to fold everything together. And I just wanted to also let you all know a shortcut, because I used to use this all the time. I would actually use Bisquick for my dumplings. It was so great and so easy to use. And now they have a gluten-free version. So if you're in a pinch and you don't have time to go through this, then you can easily use the gluten-free Bisquick. I'm sure there's probably somebody saying, you cannot do that, that is not Southern. But if you're in a pinch, it is definitely something you can utilize, and it will turn out just as wonderful. All right, see now? So if I had added any more moisture, then it would have been way too loose. But this way, it's got some consistency to it. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add some cheese into the mixture itself. What do you think of that? Does that sound
Wonderful.
okay?
Sounds terrific.
Sounds good to me. Add some of that, and then we'll be good to go. So add a little bit of sharp cheddar to the mixture. And just blend that in, and then we're going to go ahead and start dropping our dumplings into our chicken soup. And here's the thing with dumplings. These are American dumplings, right? Southern dumplings. But Italians, we have our version of dumpling, and you know what it's called? What's it called? Gnocchi. It's our potato. That's a dumpling, basically. It's a potato dumpling. Potato and flour, and that's an Italian dumpling. So, okay. Now we've got that. Let me rinse off my hands a little bit. Okay, so what I generally do, I'm going to actually switch things around here so I can bring my other pan over here. And let me show you all, it's bubbling like crazy, but you do want it this hot, because when you drop the dumplings into them, you want it to automatically just quickly start to firm up. So this is our pan of chicken soup that's already finished. We put some thyme in it, a couple of bay leaves, and it's all ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've got that on low. I'm going to turn that off because we'll have enough heat, and then I can always turn it back on. So what I do is I use a teaspoon, okay? I like using a teaspoon because I don't want my dumplings too big, okay? And then I just kind of firm them up a little bit. And the reason I do this is because I don't want them to completely fall apart in the broth. If you just take a spoon and you just throw it in, then it's going to separate out. It's not going to have, a lot of times it's not going to stay together with the consistency that you necessarily want. So I always make sure that I do form it a little bit before I put it in. Now I'm going to put these to the side, put these in my little cup here, and make a few, and then put them in there. Let's see how it goes. Now, not a lot. You don't want to work too much with it, because if you work too much with it, Natasha and I were talking to my friend earlier how it gets too doughy. And then you're kind of like, it's just a piece of thick,
A lumpy,
heavy dough, right? So you don't want to work too much with it. Let's see, I had never heard of tapioca flour. I know until I was gluten-free and started all this, I had never heard of it either. And they keep coming out with different flours too. I don't know. Every time I turn around, there's like a black bean flour and a garbanzo bean flour and this flour and that flour. And then I saw the quinoa and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, quinoa flour. One, it's really healthy for you. And two, it has more of that consistency of regular flour, which is what we want. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put these 5 in here. I'm going to turn it back on so that it's boiling because I want to make sure that they cook well. So drop them in. And that's what you do. You just start dropping them in. And one by one, you just keep adding and adding until you have the amount that you want in them. And sometimes what I'll do is if I feel like I've had enough, hey Maddie, is I'll go ahead and I will also reserve some of the dough for a later batch, you know, because, all right, I'll be honest, I love the dumplings. So I take them and I like overload my bowl with chicken and the dumplings. And so then it's like, oh, there's not a lot of dumplings left in there. I better make some more. So if you have leftover batter, just save it and put it to the side, or dough, save it, put it in the side, put it in the refrigerator. It'll be fine for a couple of days. And then you can go ahead and you can add as you need to. Because if you're anything like me, that's like the best part, I think. Mm-hmm. Oh, the dumplings. And you can add whatever herbs you want to. You know, I added thyme today, and I just used dried thyme. You know, a lot of times I would use the thyme from my garden, but I thought today I'm just going to use the dried thyme for today. And that is not what happened was. No, it's not. Get it up there so you guys can see the end result. So I've got another 5 I'm putting in here. But that's how easy this is. And it's such a great dish on a day like this, and it's so easy to make. And like I said, I mean, if you wanted to, like if you wanted to make this evening, just run to the store, get a roaster chicken, get some chicken broth, dice up some onion, some celery, and some carrots, and you've got the base. Heat that for an hour, and you're good to go. And then go ahead and make your dough for your dumplings gluten-free using the flours, which are the quinoa, the tapioca, and the sweet rice flour. You can use brown rice flour as well. I think that's even a little more grainier than the white rice flour, but you know, whatever you've got. I'm always also for plan B, you know, improvising. If I don't have one, then I will just work with what I got. What are you gonna do? Sometimes you just gotta work with what you got. Work with the gifts that God gave you. Chris, now that I need it to boil, it's not, right? There we go. All right. There we go. Now it's boiling again. Okay, that's enough for now. Put that to the side. And then we're just going to go ahead and let that come to a boil. And it doesn't take long at all for everything to set together and for your dumplings to be ready. So we'll scoop that out in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and, before I do that, because I have not taken my afternoon dose of collagen, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Very important, if you're not on collagen, it's really important to take it. 2 tablespoons once a day. So 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon or evening, and you are good to go. And let me tell you, it is absolutely the best tasting collagen that's on the market, let alone the best collagen that's on the market. So if you're curious, I'd be more than happy to give you information on our liquid biocell. But now I'm done with that for today. And I don't have to take that later. So let's see how we're doing. Oh, they are puffing up lovely. Oh my goodness. They are looking great. You gonna come over here and check it out? No, I'm gonna stay off camera, she says. I'm off camera right now. All right, I'd like to turn them gently so that they get cooked on the top as well as on the bottom sides. But be gentle because we don't want them to break apart. So just a couple of more minutes and they'll be ready. I'm gonna get a dish. A dish and a ladle. A dish and a ladle. Cannot wait. And then of course I'm gonna make more of these when we're done. But that was a fast one. My gosh, it's 4:26 and we're done basically. So we're gonna go ahead and scoop this out so y'all can see it. How delicious it is and looks. Oh my gosh, this looks so good, Tish. This looks so good.
Better.
Turn that off. And what I love too, you know, the dumplings are on top, and there's our chicken and dumplings. And as the dumplings stay in the chicken soup, it's going to make it a creamier soup as they sit there. So the longer you let them sit in the soup, the better. Are you gonna try it?
Dinner's on.
Dinner's on, girl. Dinner is on. Come try it with me.
All right, let me try it.
Oh, I convinced her she's coming over. All right.
Oh, this looks good. Oh, these are very light.
I know they came out really light.
And they really
very
held
hot
together.
though. Be careful, guys.
Mmm.
They came good?
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Mmm.
And they held together nicely.
They did. They did. I'm telling you, I put the one egg in it, and then the shortening makes the big difference. Not too much of anything. Really good. I can't wait to finish digging in. You all have a wonderful Sunday evening. Manja manja. Ciao. I will see you next Sunday. Have a good one, everyone.